What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Expected Bets for your go-to podcast for all things hockey betting. Today, I'm joined by my two co-hosts, as always. Betsky, how we doing?
Does it smell like a barbecue in here? Because we are about to smoke this team, I think, after a little bit of that pre-recording discussion.
Oh yeah, I wish we would have recorded that and just left it in as the intro of just 5 minutes of ragging on this team.
Yeah,
But hey,
damn it,
honestly,
we
some
should've
Carolina
done.
barbecue doesn't sound bad right now. It's
No,
it's a little
and
past dinner line, so listen, if
this is
that's what they have to offer, I'm in.
yep.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
your
down for
season
that.
tickets and a free barbecue subscription. I may be down in Carolina in a week.
Yep.
So
And
who
just
knows at this
watching your
point
team
here.
get slowly cooked.
I'm a Sabres fan. That's fine with me. That's fine with me. I'm used to it. Franco, how we doing out there in Philly?
I'm doing pretty good, man. This team seems so weird. I don't know.
Mhm.
They've been like such a betting black hole for like what feels like a year, maybe a year and a half at this point. So, yeah, I'll be sitting on the sidelines a lot with this team. I think when it comes to our game by game breakdowns every week or every day. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll get into it. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, let's get into the team preview for the Carolina Hurricanes. Getting into the team preview for the Carolina Hurricanes here. They make a few off-season additions. Betsky, your boy Ghosty, joins this roster on defense. Their defense actually looks pretty good here. Birds is getting older, that we know, but we also look at Orlov on there as well. You have Walker, Slavin, and Ghosty slides in on that bottom six, or the third line pairing, excuse me, here. But they also have some up and coming rookies that could make this roster as well. In addition to Ghost Spear, they bring over Roslovic, Carrier, Walker, who I just mentioned, Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson, and Riley Stillman. We talked a lot about these additions before the show, but let's repeat it for the audience here. What are your thoughts on these moves Carolina made in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean it's going to hurt. I mean, losing Teravainen too for your forward depth. Gensel, the trade line acquisition, that's now gone. But I mean, the big pieces that they lost here are Shea and Pesce.
Yeah.
That's just going to really sting on that blue line. And I think they did a decent job by bringing Walker to kind of help supplement that. And Gostisbehere should definitely help with some of the puck moving capabilities here. But those are two top, like two-way players that eat minutes. They do everything right. They can chip in offensively too. And that is going to be, I think, where this team feels a little bit different this season. Even losing like Nosen and some of that depth in the forward, again, Teravainen, an underappreciated player, I think, overall, and across the league of the two-way play he can bring in and some of that creativity. This looks like one of those teams that a lot of the chairs had to get shuffled, and they didn't have a plan of how to shuffle them.
Yeah. I mean, Kuznetsov also leaves. He heads back to the homeland, but he wasn't their worst player in the postseason by any means.
No.
He contributed offensively. Tony DeAngelo is also out the door as well. Franco, we kind of the rumor, or not rumor, but the stereotype around Carolina is that they're on the cheaper side, but they did dish out some big contracts. Slavin, Natchez, and Jarvis all got paid this offseason. What are your kind of thoughts on how this roster shapes up this season?
I think they did a good job there, at least. I think if you had a choice between signing Jarvis and Natchez and Slavin as compared to guys like Teravainen, who, I mean, as much as I liked him as a piece there, like they almost seemed like they didn't want him around last season, right? Like he was up and down the lineup a lot. Gensel was really a short-term ad. I think that was for the playoff push, and they probably knew that long-term they weren't going to be able to extend him, and they didn't really give up much for him either. So, I mean, as much as like we see him on this loss sheet, I don't really even almost consider him a loss on this team, right? Kuznetsov getting up there in age, obviously, and going back to the KHL. But yeah, I mean, these guys contributed, but if you had the choice, right, you would rather sign a younger Jarvis, a younger Natchez, right? You had to make the decision between Slave and Pesci and Shea. It's tough. You can't have everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So eventually, these guys are going to get these big contracts elsewhere, and you're not going to be able to keep bringing it back. So I think with everything being said and the team having to kind of turn over this roster at least a little bit, it feels not too bad, at least with what they were able to bring back. I know there are a lot of rumors about Natchez being traded, and it's still pretty good get to be able to extend him for 2 more years. Getting Jarvis for 8 years is good business, right? You lock him up long term. He's your long term piece on that wing. So I guess
where I feel like the blunders on this roster is not doing something to get rid of Orlov and his $7.7 million cap hit, which probably was something they should have never done last offseason, or not. I mean, buying out Burns for 1 year. I mean, you're going to be paying him 2.25, and I feel like you could have done something to at least keep one of Shea and like Taro Vinen, or like two. If you're going to lose 3 or 4 pieces, I feel like there was damage control that could have been done where you're only losing 2. But I mean, they had a lot of good players on this roster last season, and that's kind of what happens when you have a lot of good players, is you can't keep them all.
Yep, salaries go up, and then you have to pay the young players. You can't you can't keep getting them for pennies on the dollar. So that's the unfortunate thing with the cap.
Do we know how many more years Orlov has left on his deal?
It's just this year, so they're going to have nearly $8 million freed up. I know.
So why wouldn't Buffalo be the perfect landing spot for him? Buffalo has $8 million in cap space. They could use a defenseman, kind of that shutdown role. It felt like Orlov after the Skinner buyout. At least you kind of bring in someone to change that defensive unit up a little bit. You know, get rid of Yoki Haru. He's a fucking trash can. But I would have loved to seen Orlov replace him.
Yeah, I mean, they should have been shopping him, right? With the thought that they needed to try to extend Shea or Pesci. They should have been actively doing that, and it's not. And honestly, you have Burns there. I mean, how much longer does he have left? Just in general, you can't keep trying.
He's 39,
top pair defenseman.
This is his last season.
Yeah.
So it's like buying a big screen TV and a big L-shaped couch and 5 other chairs to put in your living room, and you forgot to measure it, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta get rid of some of this.
Yeah.
Sell it on Craigslist.
Yep.
Going back to some contract talk, though, we talked about how Carolina dished out a bunch of deals. Rob Brendamore still not signed. Last year on his deal, there was talk in the offseason on kind of what that contract would look like. Obviously, I don't think it's going to get done before the season starts unless something changes in the next few weeks. But Betsky, do you think they kind of re-sign him, or what is his expectations this year to kind of earn that contract?
I mean, gosh, you got to think they will, but
right? It would seem like a no-brainer regardless of kind of what happens this season, because you figure they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But he's
and
kind of emerged as one of the better coaches in the
absolutely
NHL. Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like that's a situation where you start chasing something else that you don't need to chase instead of fixing the goaltending problem, which we haven't talked about.
Speaking of goaltenders, there we go. We were high on Koshetov, I think last year or 2 years ago when he first kind of emerged in this lineup in the postseason. He played extremely well. And it's kind of been in that 2 to 3 goalie rotation Carolina has had. They've had some pretty decent depth compared to kind of other teams in this division and the league overall. Anderson obviously had blood clotting issues last year.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering that correctly here. Now it's just Koshetov and Anderson. So I'll throw it to you, Franco. What are your kind of thoughts on this goaltending situation heading into the season? Because it feels like if Anderson has more issues again, can Koshetov really handle this majority workload?
They've been babying him for 2 years now, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, right? You have 2 veterans that are pretty capable, and Anderson and Ronta, but we know what those guys are. And I mean, I feel like I've been beating this drum for at least a year now of just like let's move on here, guys. Like it's time. Like these are two injury prone goaltenders. You have a young guy. Like let's let the reins come off. Let him go. So I really hope that he's the number one here this year. That they finally realize that that is what this team needs. I, if I'm a Carolina fan, I don't want to see Freddie Anderson as the number one goalie in another 35 to 40 start season for Kochekov. I want him to be the guy and Anderson to be the spell, the 30 game, 25 game type of guy. And that keeps Anderson fresh as well. I mean, we've seen the injuries. The injuries just continue to pile up for this guy. If you have him fresh come playoff time, like that feels a lot better than coming in banged up like he has the last 2 years. So yeah, let's ride him. Let's ride him. And I feel like he's going to be a good goaltender in this league.
Yeah, we haven't talked about many rookies in these past few teams here, but they do have two interesting prospects here: Bradley Nadeau and Jackson Blake. Both could make this roster. Nadeau from the University of Maine and Blake from the University of North Dakota here. Right now, Daily Faceoff has Nadeau on the second line right now. Betsky, any thoughts on these two?
This is a team that drafts extremely well. These are two prospects I don't know too much about, so I'm not as aware of what their play style is, but this is a team that is constantly able to stay in, top 10 to 15 ranks of top prospects pools, even though they're one of the best teams in the league every season. So this is a fairly like a trusted process type of team that could have depth that keeps on coming up through the prospect pipeline for years to come. Even somebody like Seth Jarvis, I know he was like a first round pick at the point that time, but I don't think anybody had him as a top line forward, and a good two-way player, really. And now you see him kind of come up and good development, and there he is. So yeah, I think it should be interesting to see if these kids stick on a deep team that would like to make the playoffs and make a run. I think this is one of those turning points for a team like this too. We were just talking about them losing or regaining a bunch of cap space with guys like Burns and Orlov potentially coming off the cap, the salary cap. So if you can get some kids who can start to make an impact, now you're going to have more room to really retool this roster. So I think this will be a team that will give these players opportunities if they can steal those spots out of training camp.
Yeah. Franco, did you have anything else to add on the rookies?
Yeah, I hope that Nadeau breaks the team because I'm not that excited by Tyson Jost and Eric Robinson and Riley Stillman and these types of guys. Like you have the guys on the fourth line already, right? You bring in Carrier, you have Jordan Martinook, you have Jesper Fast, right? These guys, we know what they are. They're not top two line guys, right? Let this guy run. You bring in Roslovic as well. Maybe he hovers between that second and third line. But yeah, why not give the kid a chance? I don't understand why Yost keeps getting run. Like I get he's a former first round pick, but like what has he shown anywhere that he's been? Teams keep trading for him and keep getting rid of him. So I don't get it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I get it for sure. All right, before we get into the best and worst case scenario for the Carolina Hurricanes, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode of Expected Bets 4 is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever stopped to think about something new you'd love to learn? As adults, we don't always make the time to learn we used to when we were kids. Kids are constantly exploring and growing, but somewhere along the way, life gets busy and we lose some of that curiosity. What's something you've been wanting to dive into? Maybe it's cooking, picking up a new language, or even figure out your golf game to finally beat your new friend. Just because we're older doesn't mean we have to stop growing. In fact, therapy can help you reconnect with that sense of wonder. It reminds you that your back to school moment can happen at any time. Therapy is not just for people who have gone through something major. It's for anyone looking to be the best version of themselves. Therapy can help you learn positive ways to cope with stress, set healthy boundaries, and tackle challenges with more confidence. It's really about giving yourself the tools to thrive and grow, no matter what stage of life you're in. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Now back to the show. All right, looking at the best and worst case scenario for the Carolina Hurricanes, Betsky, it kind of feels similar to a team we just talked about here.
Yeah.
Do you think, let's start with the best case, do you think they're a legit Stanley Cup contender?
I don't see it. I think that, again, I think this team is one that's in transition. I think this is a year where they may take a step back, and then maybe they make some big moves in free agency when they have more wiggle room. Maybe after Anderson's finally gone, maybe they go for another goaltender.
Because Burns is out, Orlov's out.
Yeah. Now you get to like really kind of mold this team and maybe get some new pieces to kind of play with your core of Jarvis, Shevnikov, Aho. And they're Slavin.
Yeah,
they're like a real deep blue line core that's like all gone now. So
and the players they resigned were to multi-year deals too. It's not. I think the only guy who only got a 1-year deal was Spencer Martin.
Yeah, but to me, they aren't the focal point of moving forward too. So, I just think your best case scenario is maybe an Eastern Conference appearance. I really don't see them making it to the Stanley Cup. So obviously the fans would love that. They're a team that I bet on to win the Eastern Conference final last season and didn't do it. And I'm tempering my expectations. I think the best case scenario for them is just to get to the Eastern Conference final.
Yeah. Franco, opposite of that, what do you think the worst case scenario for this team is?
I think it's where we finally see that the time has come. This window's closed. They had their chances, and now pieces are moving out. Maybe these guys that they brought in to replace them aren't what they thought they were, and they just are fighting for that wild card spot, right? Like, I think we can still probably agree that this is a playoff team, especially based on what the other teams look like in the Metro. But, I mean, you never know if a team is going to surprise. We're expecting a team like the Devils to be better this year. Rangers are still damn good. You don't know what you're going to get from those other, like, fringy teams. If they do surprise, like, this could be a team that is right on the outside looking in or right on the fringe of it. So it could get scary for sure if these pieces don't work and the team just isn't what we think it is anymore.
Yeah, no, that I agree with that. All right, before we get into some team and player futures, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, DraftKings. NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. The NFL season kicks off on Thursday night with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Chiefs are currently favored by 3, with the total being set at 46.5. If you're looking to place your bet on Week 1 NFL action, head over to DraftKings. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the best place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you just bet $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Only at DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus premium terms at NFL.com/terms.
All right, looking ahead at some team futures here, the regular season points total is at 100.5. The playoffs minus 350 for yes, no, plus 270. As much as we're down on this team, it feels like there's still a playoff team, as we mentioned. But Franco, any division, conference, Stanley Cup odds jump out to you?
Yeah, probably not for any of those. I feel like, you see 100.5 and they had 111 last year, and there should be like a smash over, especially considering we're at least believing this is still a playoff team. But I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't feel very good to take that. And I do think that a lot of this Metro division doesn't look very good at the bottom. So I think they'll still get that point total. I don't want to bet it. I'm probably going to stay off of these props, though, because I just don't really see much value either way.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty large gap, especially from 111 last year, now down to their regular season points total of 100.5. It kind of echoes our sentiment of what we've been saying is this team is not as good as they were last year. Betsky, any of these jump out to you? Are you almost leaning under on this point total? But again, like what Franco said, the bottom of this division is pretty weak. It's not the Atlantic by any means.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like the division's crummy enough where they can kind of get some wins, some free wins there. And in the end of the day, it's still going to be a tough team to play against. They play a system very well. They know how to trap teams out. If they take the lead, they just absolutely suffocate you. That's why playing their props is just a headache night in, night out. So they could be winning a lot of 2-1, 3-1 games this season, and they could fly over that. And the
This
other
Metro
side of this
does,
is,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't love any of the value on anything here. I wish I could get a little bit more for maybe the division, and then you're really banking on other teams not having the magic and that they get just extremely solid goaltending and the blue line clicks from day one. But I mean, even with blue lines, you lost two major pieces and brought in two brand new people who have not played the system before, and it could take them a while to get even adjusted to that. So I think what I'm doing is talking myself into the under for the 100.5, but Washington, Pittsburgh, Flyers, Columbus are all in this division. I mean,
yeah,
it's a lot of free
wins there.
So if you're looking at the division odds, right, plus 250, and we think there's two other contenders here, New York and New Jersey.
Yeah. You just wish you were getting better. You just wish you were getting a better number than plus 250 here.
Yeah.
Yep.
This team feel like the Islanders, like from a couple of years ago, where it's just like, you feel like they're going to shut teams down. You're not excited to bet anything involving them. Like, it's just kind of like, yeah, they're going to make the playoffs, but it's just not exciting when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you'll certainly back them a few games here and there on the money line when it's right. But yeah, no, I would agree. And player props, I don't really think it's a hot commodity by any means. Getting into some Carolina player props now. Sebastian Aho is at 81.5 points. Seth Jarvis at 62.5, and Svechnikov is at 64.5. We might as well do their goals now too, right? So Aho's at 35.5, Jarvis at 27.5, and Svechnikov at 23.5. Franco, I'll start with you. Any of those player props jump out to you?
Kind of like in Jarvis at 62.5 points. I feel like being on the top line, another year here, gets a big contract. I feel like he's kind of got to prove it a little bit, right? So 62.5 feels kind of light. I don't really want to touch Aho at 81.5. It feels about at where he usually is at, you're talking point per game type. So that's probably where I'm going to lean most heavily, I would say.
Yeah, his goal total, is pretty interesting as well at 27.5 after he had 33 last year. So I don't hate that look either. If you're just kind of going off that. Betsky, Aho, Jarvis, or Svechnikov, any of those names jump out to you to place a future wager on?
The Aho goals is the one I would go for. 36, 36, 37 in its last three seasons. So that's kind of where I would hang. And especially with the playmakers that he has around him. Jarvis has been a great additional piece. Him and then Aho have some good chemistry, but he's had good chemistry with Shevnikov and before. I think the biggest thing here is there's no concern of where he plays on the lineup, unlike, a guy like Natchez, Shevnikov, or Jarvis, who constantly get shuffled around like we saw the past 2 seasons where, they'll play really well on the top line with Aho, and then all of a sudden they're back down on the second line and the lines get all jumbled up.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Looking at some of the trophies, is anyone going to bite on the Rocket, the Art Ross, or the Hart for any of these guys?
No.
Yeah.
No.
The two that are interesting for me when looking at kind of this overall scope is the Calder for Nadeau if he does end up playing on that second line at 100-1. A lot of these other top first round picks are put in much worse situations, and he's at least surrounded by some sort of talent on this roster.
Yeah.
And if he is given that shot from day one, I don't hate that bet at all. And then looking at Koshetov at 50-1 to win the Vezina, Franco, you talked about before, if he does get that number one spot, it's just not the worst team to be on here. And he has played well in big time situations before.
Yeah. I mean, this is the more I look at this team, it's just a defense first team, right? They have that solid shutdown line. The defense, of course, still looks pretty damn good despite the losses. So again, it's just, is he going to get the run that we need to be able to win enough games to win a Vezina? I think that's the biggest question. I don't mind taking a stab at the price, but it just sucks seeing him and Anderson both at the same exact number, which just shows that they're just going to split and just be 1A, 1B
that's true.
goalies. And then if that's the case, you're screwed anyway. So I do like the Nadeau bet though. I mean, at that price, you just grab it now. And if he does end up being that guy, then on the top 2 or 3 lines, then yeah, you're going to be smiling.
Yeah. Those odds aren't getting any higher, Betsky, any kind of closing thoughts on those future for the trophies?
No, I'm in agreement. Those would be the only ones I would touch here. But.
Yeah. All right. We'll just I'll throw it right back to you for your closing thoughts on this team. Seems like this was kind of the first team that we were a little bit down on heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is a playoff team, but I borderline wish the no to make the playoffs was a little bit tastier here. I mean, there's a world where goaltenders don't show up. You get an injury from somebody like Aho, and this team looks very, very different. I think this is a team that's going to be in transition, and we kind of mentioned it before, but they're going to have a lot more cap space to play with next season to kind of retool. I don't think this team's going anywhere anytime soon as far as just all of a sudden bottoming out or anything, but I think this may be one of those years they take a step back before ultimately finding more pieces to take another step forward or have some of their kids start breaking onto the roster and kind of changing the makeup of it.
Yeah. Franco, any thoughts?
Feels like they're kind of stuck in this like hell of just being a good team, but not a great team, right? Like they have the core, they have the pieces that's going to be, this team is just going to be a consistent playoff team like they have been in the past. And they just don't seem to be able to be good enough to get over that hump to have enough of that star power, really, right? Like they have a lot of very good players that you would take on any given team, but like, where is the guy that you're down 2-1 with 3 minutes left in the game, like, and you need a tying goal? Like, who is that? And I feel like we've been kind of saying it for a while now, and as good as this team is, it's just like they don't really have that guy, right? That one player. And I get it. There's only so many star players in the league. Every team can't have one, but it's kind of the shortcoming, I feel like, of what this team has been. And I feel like you said, Betsky, it's like they're going to continue to retool this team, and it will be a team that makes the playoffs for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. But like, when are they actually going to compete for a Stanley Cup? I don't see it now, and I don't know that I necessarily see it in the immediate future either. So it's that hell, like I said.
The way I see them getting to a cup is having kind of like a run like the Blues did when they got it. So they bring in a big piece like Ryan O'Reilly and maybe move some assets for that, and it just clicks, and all of a sudden all the roster falls into place. But those moves didn't happen this season.
One fight in practice. That's all they need.
Yep.
That's all it takes for this Carolina Hurricanes team to get over the hump. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Expected Bets 4. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Also, check us out on social media at X, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Again, thank you to our wonderful sponsors, BetterHelp and DraftKings. We appreciate everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.